So my name is James Blessman, and I want to welcome you here to this podcast, which is smartPlace.today. This is my first installment. You'll probably notice a lot of mistakes. It's not particularly professional, but I had to get it done because I made a bet with my daughter that if I didn't get it done by tomorrow, I would give her $100. I might give her $100 anyway, just because I appreciate the motivation to finally complete this project. But in any event, my name is James Blessman. I'm a physician. I've been trained in both internal medicine and occupational medicine. And I would explain that to my mother and saying that my job is to make sure that your job doesn't make you sick. So I'm to understand how to identify hazards and control them. But I would also say that I don't deal with, well, while I can help you with making sure your job doesn't make you sick, I don't deal with you being sick of your job. I used to say that in the beginning, but then I realized kind of the importance of stress. And I've come to understand a lot about stress and how to control stress. And we'll get to some of that in later podcasts also. Um, but let me just say that as I share these different things with you, I don't consider this medical advice for you because I don't know your circumstance. What I'm doing is sharing information that I'm finding helpful in my particular life, and maybe you will find it helpful in yours also. I do recommend that you follow up with your own clinician to make sure that any recommendation that you hear from me or anything that sounds like a recommendation may work for you. So, why am I doing this? It is really because uh, I've just become a little, not fed up is not the right thing, but just concerned for the amount of illness that I see around me. Um, there's been too much cancer, too much hypertension, too much depression, uh, just too much illness, and more illness than I think we deserve to have. Or I would say that we could really experience a much better life than we are experiencing. What's interesting, particularly in the United States, we have the lowest life expectancy of pretty much any other developed country. And it's actually getting worse. And in fact, our life expectancy has been going down. And I don't think it has to be that way. In fact, I think instead of, what is our current life expectancy, that the body is designed to get to probably at least 100, probably 120, and actually live to 120 well. But we don't really get there. And what I'd like to do is discuss those things that I think can improve your life, and while you're here, allow you to live it with a greater sense of fulfillment. All right. Well, how do we do that, particularly with all the chronic disease? Well, I actually think that um, much of the chronic diseases are really different faces of the same disease. And spoiler alert, I'm going to say that that is metabolic dysfunction, in that there's a challenge with the organelles in our cells where they are not working optimally. And there are just a few things that interfere with that. And if we can correct that, we can get a lot of these medical conditions to go away with similar interventions. So, why do I say that? Well, here's an interesting observation. If you cut yourself, all right, your body automatically knows what to do to heal that cut. It will send in platelets to stop the bleeding. It will send in white cells to prevent infection. It'll send in fibroblasts to scar that down. And you don't have to give it any instruction. You don't have to say, hey, I'm going to need some white cells down here. Hey, I'm going to need some fibroblasts over here. It automatically knows what to do. However, if you create what I call errors of omission, that means your body's looking for something to utilize, but it can't seem to find it, like vitamin C. Your body goes, hey, we're going to need some vitamin C to fix this. And then he goes, oh, well, we don't have any. Well, that's what I'm gonna need. And, well, we don't have any. Well, I don't know what to tell you, but that's what we're gonna need. That's an error of omission. Errors of commission are things like if I were to take my finger and put it on both sides of that wound and I kept separating it, that's an error of commission where the body is experiencing something that it doesn't want to experience. And so there are various hazards, which are biologic or chemical or physical or even social that our bodies don't want to experience. But I dare say if you were to remove the errors of omission and errors of commission, many times the body will find its way back to wholeness. And that's really what I want to have discussions about at this particular on this particular podcast. So here's another interesting thing to think about in terms of that wisdom about the body's ability to heal. It's also estimated that the body constructs or experiences 1,000 billion chemical reactions every second. Now that's fast. So think about the coordination that needs to occur just from my finger pointing and kind of doing this. I mean, the number of hold on a second. I think that's my sauna making noise. The number of chemical reactions that has to occur just for me to have this conversation is mind-boggling. And so the wisdom that put that together to me is just phenomenal. But I'm going to go even further and say, think about this. From the time that you were conceived, or I was conceived, and that sperm and that egg came together to form a single cell, formed a single cell. Within that single cell was all of the instruction to know how to make your eyes, your nose, your mouth, your lungs, your kidneys, the muscles, the bones. It not only knows how to make it, it knows when to make it and where to put it. And the funny thing about it is not only do you make the structures, but you make the workers that actually make those structures, which is a very important thing to take note of. And so the wisdom of this body is just incredible. And if we would just get out of the way and allow it to do what it was designed to do, I think we would see some fantastic things. Excuse me. And I would say we have only scratched the surface of our ultimate potential. And the best is really yet to come. So, how does this website work? Well, I think that, wellness discussions need to include discussions in 4 different domains: mental fitness, nutritional fitness, physical fitness, and social fitness. And I use the term fitness because, like, when you talk about nutrition, it's not just what you eat. It's things like when you eat, how you prepare your food. All those things are particularly important. So when we talk about mental fitness, and I want to mention mental fitness first because I really think that is one of the keys to wellness is paying attention to mental fitness, where the goal is to make positive emotions the familiar. And we'll talk more about that in future podcasts. But I just want to put a pin in that for now. The other thing is when it comes to nutritional fitness, the goal is to make sure that you get the right combinations of macromolecules of things like proteins, fats, and carbohydrates, as well as a couple essential chemicals, minerals, that type thing, because those are the components that your body uses to make everything that it needs to make, okay, from those same carbohydrates, protein, and fats. Then you have to do physical fitness, which is really about generating energy and getting you to where you need to be in order to acquire the things you need to do for your body to work. And then the last one is social fitness, which is also overlooked, but it's interesting that it's the quality of your social relationships. There's what's called the Men's Harvard study. You can Google that, Men's Harvard study, and it pretty much determined that it is the quality of your social relationships that ultimately determine how well that you do in life. And I'm reminded of a quote. Um, this came from a book called Essentialism. I can't remember the author, but I'm sure I'll put it on the screen someplace so that you can see this. And I'm not sure if this was mentioned in there or where I heard this in particular, but the phrase is that the sculptor creates his masterpiece by removing everything that doesn't matter. And so social fitness is about focusing on the things that really matter. And we'll come back to this. It's really about service to others, ultimately. Okay. All right. So those are the things that we'll be discussing. And I like to give information in terms of principles, which are, you know, kind of life truths, at least as we think they are. We'll talk about specific practices, and we'll talk about some products also. We'll be able to recommend some products to you. Um, and let me just say that, you know, principles are the longest lasting. Like, you know, fruits and vegetables are good for you. That's kind of a principle that probably lasts a long time. The fruits and vegetables that you eat, in terms of the practices, that's a shorter time frame, because the fruits and vegetables that are available to me today um, were not necessarily available to me 20 years ago. All right, so that has changed over time. The products that I use in order to consume that food, they're products that weren't even here a couple years ago. So that's the most volatile. And so if we're going to get to that information, that requires that we have conversation. And that's why there needs to be this two-way dialogue. I mean, we could say that green teas are good, but you might say, well, which green tea is the best? Well, if I've got to do that, then it would take me forever to get through all of the different iterations of the green teas. But if collectively we were to think about this as a challenge and to try and figure out which is the best, we could probably, you know, if we had 1,000 or 1,000,000 people kind of working on this and communicating, we can probably get down to some best products pretty quickly. So um, that's why I think this conversation and what I really love about social media, because it does allow us to have conversations. We just have to have conversations that really matter. So, you know. All right. So to get you started, so that's really what the website is about. And to get you started, I want to introduce three books to you. The first is a book called Cured. It's by Jeff Rediger. And in this book, Jeff Rediger, who is a physician, has been studying spontaneous remission. So these are medical conditions where typically where medicine has given up on them and they were expected to die, and then their medical conditions went away. And I'm talking things that we think don't go away, like brain tumors, like glioblastoma multiforme, or pancreatic cancer, or pulmonary fibrosis, or rheumatoid arthritis. These are cases where people's clinical condition actually went away. And so what he does is he describes what seems to be common features among them. And one of the features that I'll mention, and you should read the book. I don't want to give you information such that you don't necessarily read this book, because I would suggest that you read it. But it seemed like one of the common features that people had a change of mind, a change of heart, and they really started to focus on things, or they really became their authentic selves. And, you know, some of them may have done some exercise different. They may have changed their diet in some ways. But many of them, I would say, had a change of mind and a change of heart that seemed to be important. So that's one book. The second book is called Discourse in a Sober Life. And this is by Luigi Cornaro, who wrote this in the 1500s. And Luigi Cornaro, he actually was kind of born into royalty, so to speak. He had a lot of money. He used to party a lot. And by the time he was 35, he was so sick, he just wanted to die. And in fact, they thought he was going to die in about 6 months. So, by some circumstances, he decided to change his lifestyle and he began to eat like you would eat if you had a febrile illness. You know how you tend to focus on broths with some meat in there and some vegetable. And that's pretty much what he would eat. He would limit himself to 12 ounces of food per day. They didn't know about calories, I guess, at that time. So, about 12 ounces of food per day and 14 ounces of wine. And he noticed after doing this, kind of focusing on soups and the wine, that he felt better after a week. So he decided to stay with this. And after a year, all of his medical conditions were gone. I mean, that's incredible. And this guy in the 1500s ended up living to, and it's debatable, is either 99 or 103. And at that time, he could still ride a horse. He had enough energy to climb on and ride a horse. His eyesight was good. His hearing was good. He had all of his teeth, had all of his teeth. And that's incredible. And I won't, uh, um, the way he died was boss. I suggest that you get the book and read it. It is just incredible, the way that he left this planet. But in any event, just amazing. And what he stated was the goal is really not to eat too much. And that if you don't eat too much, that the body fully digests what is in there and doesn't leave these bad humors to create disease within your body. And I have heard this. I think in the Blue Zone Project, they talk about eating until 80% full and kind of pushing away. So you should always leave yourself a little bit hungry. I think that there's some value to that. But I would have a look at that book. The final book is called The Abundance Project. And this book is by Derek Rydell. And he mentions the 7 gifts that give you everything. And it's really about what you do. Because again, life is about what you do and your purpose. And so he talks about these 7 gifts, one of which is actually forgiveness. And you have to think about, there's the issue of self forgiveness as well, and even giving to yourself. Phenomenal read. I really would suggest that you read that particular book. And we will come back to many of the principles in these books as we go forward in the podcast, of which I want to commit. I'm going to be doing a podcast a week, or else I got to pay money to my kids. So um, look for a podcast every week. My goal is to have my podcast less than 10 minutes each. I don't want them to be particularly long. This one might be a little long. Actually, it's almost 20 minutes, or it might be 20 minutes. But that's really about it. So I just want to end with on this point about purpose. So remember, I was talking about the single cell and how you're made up of all these cells and they know what to do. So you have like a trillion or so cells, or even more, and every cell in your body knows what it's supposed to do. And it doesn't go and ask other adjacent cells to it, why is it here? It inherently knows. So if everything that you are made of knows why it's here, why would you not? Okay. I guarantee you, you come here on purpose and you inherently know what that is. You have to be able to listen to yourself in order to get that particular guidance. I'm not saying that you can't pay attention to the things around you, which may serve as confirmation, but you come here on purpose. And I dare say that there are 2 purposes. There's both a specific purpose and a general purpose. So your general purpose, well, let's just take the heart for example. Its specific purpose is to pump blood through the body. Its general purpose is to be the best heart it can be. Similarly, for the lungs, its specific purpose is to put oxygen in the blood. Its general purpose is to be the best lungs that it can be. And so, another interesting thing about that, let's say the heart were to say, well, I'm supposed to pump blood, but I kind of like this blood, so I think that I'll hold on to it, keep it for myself. If it kept it for itself, that blood would not be oxygenated by the lungs, it would not be purified by the kidneys, and ultimately the heart would poison itself. The heart does its best, or the heart can become its best and be its best when it's doing its best to serve the rest of the body. And I dare say that works for us as well. So we are here in some way to serve the rest of the body. And let me just say, it doesn't matter where you've been and how down you've been, if there's been dirt and darkness in your past, don't worry about that. If you're let me tell you, life has the ability to take you out at any time if it no longer needs you. If you're still breathing, you still have a purpose. And, there's countless stories of people who have done very well, and they did very well after their darkest days. So don't give up on yourself. Just develop a heart of service, and all will be well. So I don't know your specific purpose, but I will say that that is within you. But your general purpose is to be the best person that you can be. So if you believe in that and you want to continue that conversation, come back and check me out. You can also go to www.smartplace.today. I'm sorry, www.smartplace.today. Right. And that's kind of a social media website where we can have of interaction. So come hang out. Let's become architects of our bodies, of our cities, of our world, and let's make this a better place. Thank you so much for your time today.